Welcome to this Way to Fire YouTube video. Today it's me, Andy. I am doing a hobby vlog. I've done one of these for a little bit, so I was incentivized to do one because of the release just a few days ago of the Perry Miniatures Franco-Prussian War range, building on their range that they produced when they were at Wargames Foundry. So I thought I would dig out my models. These are a variety of 19th century conflicts aimed at the Franco-Prussian War. There's a few other bits in here as well. So it's really just what I collected over years. I wasn't even really playing with them, but I collected a whole bunch of stuff, painted them up. They're not particularly ordered or anything like that, but I'll show you what I've got, and hopefully this is more for any stimulus for me to be a bit more structured on my approach to building armies going forwards, because I will be investing very heavily in the Perry Miniatures Franco-Prussian War range, because it's always been a period of military history that has been huge in my reading and interest in. I don't really know why, but it has been. Maybe it's the fantastic uniforms, maybe it's the dramatic changes of France declining and Germany rising. I don't know, but I am definitely going to be doing this again. 28mm is a crazy scale to be doing this sort of gaming, really, because these battles were huge, but there's lots and lots of opportunity for smaller scale skirmishes and small subsets of the major battles as well. So that's what I'll be focusing on. So anyway, let's have a little look at what I've got. So like I say, these are almost all Wargames Foundry miniatures. I've based them in rough battalions, but you know, there's not really any sign of that. I painted this quite a long time ago, so some of my painting has improved, some not so much. So we have a couple of units really of Zouaves. These were Frenchmen actually, who took on the colonial outfits of North Africa. Really just for style. It became a big craze at the time and stimulated the American Civil War units to also wear similarly outlandish garb. You can see I'm missing a few flags and a few flags here. Hopefully someone, another Perry's have released them, will produce good flags. I have some guard mobile behind. So these are... what happened during this war was that it started with an imperial phase and then the emperor abdicated, and that the French government didn't really then immediately cease to exist, and rather than perhaps throwing in the towel and saying, oh, it's all the last guy's fault, they perhaps rather foolishly continued to carry on the fight, leading to another 5 months of quite bitter conflict actually. So yeah, but it led to a huge mobilisation of soldiers in France, all often quite poorly equipped. It has a lot of repercussions from the sort of American Civil War, where the Confederates obviously had to, and the Union troops had to arm themselves very, very quickly. So see a lot of units that were using a variety of different weaponry from all over Europe, and also buying back what they'd sold perhaps to the Americans just a few years before. Behind them we have some cuirassiers. So these are French cuirassiers. Everyone's wearing the cuirass, or the metal breastplate, with the exception of the trumpeter there. We have some artillery. So two 6-pounders, rifled muzzleloaders, and one mitrailleuse. So this is one of the very first machine guns to be used in a war. I mean, the Gatling gun was around at the same sort of time. There's a lot of talk about mitrailleuses in the Franco-Prussian War. They deployed them in batteries rather than individually up with the infantry like you would see in World War One. So a lot of their effect was lost because their short range obviously meant that if you deployed them in batteries, counter-battery fire would deal with them quite quickly, as opposed to perhaps tactical doctrine, if they'd have known how to use them a bit more, would have been to put them up with the infantry, where their range was similar to the rifles, and therefore they could perhaps have provided better support. I have a couple of random miniatures here. So there's a chasseur d'Afrique in his manteau or greatcoat. Again, similar to the Zouaves, he's a Frenchman taking on colonial outfits. There is a carabinier of the guard. So just there was one regiment of these at this stage, unlike in the Napoleonic era where there was a lot more. These are Turcos, small unit of Turcos. I think a lot of these need a bit of repainting, I'll be honest. These are North African troops that have been from Algeria, typically maybe from Morocco as well. Actually, their proper name is not Turcos, it's Tirailleurs Algériens. We have some French line infantry from the Imperial phase. The Imperial phase, because they were in epaulettes, they took those off when it went to the Republican phase. And at the back there we have some dragoons. So these are mounted infantry effectively, but actually at this late stage of cavalry's impact, they actually acted very much like heavy cavalry. They didn't really dismount to use their rifles or carbines at all, really. What else do we have? Now we go on to the Prussians. So Prussia was the largest country in Germany, the Germanic states, of which there were many at this stage. Prussia had already fought 2 successful wars with the other North German Confederation countries against Denmark in 1864, and then against Austria and the South German and the other German states in 1866, both of which had been victorious. And therefore some of those states had been amalgamated into Prussia and a North German Confederation, and others were still sort of independent, mainly Saxony and Bavaria, but also a few others as well. What happened was obviously the successful Franco-Prussian War. They brought all of those allies along with them, and it led to the foundation of Imperial Germany in 1871, which obviously then led to First World War, where it was at the end of First World War, Imperial Germany ceased to exist. So what have we got? We've got 4 artillery batteries, 2 large, 2 are larger and 2 are smaller. There, I can't tell which are which. Krupp stainless steel rifled artillery, which was better than the French equivalent at this stage, mainly because of greater rate of fire and because of a breech loading, greater rate of fire and accuracy. But their infantry were significantly outclassed in their rifle. The French had the chassepot rifle, probably the best in the world at the time, and the Prussians had a Draise, which was actually getting on for nearly 25 years old at this stage, which was a good gun but didn't encourage accurate firing. So we have 1, 2 somewhere in the undress Feldmutz hat here, and then sort of another big bunch, which like I say, these weren't really structured, just using them as an opportunity to work out what I've got. These are all Wargames Foundry as well. Command group there. And the 3rd, I'll just check again which ones they were. 3rd East Prussian Cuirassier Regiment. So the beauty of this period, particularly in the German army, is that each unit will look quite different in the cavalry, for instance, and hussars and cuirassier and Uhlans, and just by different elements of cuffs, collars, sabotages, that sort of stuff. At the back there we've got some more artillery. These are Bavarians actually. Their uniform was quite dark in the artillery. It was a lighter cornflower blue for the infantry. Now I know Wargames Atlantic are bringing out some plastic Bavarians, which is tasty. It'd be interesting to see if the Perry twins do as well. I suspect they won't. They tend to produce just the plastic sets for the main ones, so the French infantry and Prussian infantry are planned. But I imagine that Bavarians and Saxons and everything else will be metal. That's typically what they've done, say with their Napoleonic Rangers, for instance. And then finally, I've got some Austrians. So not from the Franco-Prussian War. Obviously, these are from either the Franco-Austrian War of 1859 or the Franco-Austro-Prussian War of 1866. These are Helion and Company miniatures, which I think are now been re-released by North Star, who now own them. These are actually fantastic. They're quite large. They're going to be a bit bigger than most other ranges. They're quite tall, as you can see. So they've got wonderful flags as well. Absolutely wonderful. That needs a bit of fixing. There's a good example over there. So they had these really colourful poles as well for them. Some undress caps in amongst all of that as well. Some skirmishers and some wounded or killed troops at the front, and some artillery, and again an unusual uniform with this sort of light brown and light brown caissons as well. Really interesting guns, very similar in some ways in style to the Napoleonic era. Anyway, so there's a whole bunch of stuff, like I say, rather unstructured. I will use this as an opportunity to sort of stock check and go from here and try and be a bit more structured in setting out these armies. I'm thinking for the Franco-Prussian War, unit sizes were relatively small for the French because of lots of problems with logistics and getting themselves to the front on time. So I'm thinking their units will be a bit smaller, and the units for the Prussians are a little bit larger. French tended to be about 600, 700 men effective per battalion, and the Prussians 900 to 1,000. The Prussians were much more organised in the Franco-Prussian War, much better able to get their troops where they needed them to be. Man for man, exactly the same. The French are incredibly tenacious in defence, using the abilities of their chassepot, but the artillery and very aggressive tactics from the Prussians, and like I say, getting their armies, the most men to the right place, was exactly what was needed to win the early frontier battles, and then effectively win the war, though it did drag on for much longer. I think I'm going to sort of aim to replicate some elements of the Battle of Mars-le-Tour, which was an interesting sort of meeting engagement, and then was followed a few days later by the Battle of Gravelotte-Saint-Privat outside the city of Metz in the north of France, mainly because I'll be able to use similar regiments for both battles, and the vast majority of troops that are covered there, including guard troops and stuff like that as well. I have some other Foundry models unpainted because I didn't have a real need to get them on the table, so I'll dig out those as well. And obviously, as the Perry miniatures are released, I will be adding to this as well. The Perrys have only just released the Prussian Cavalry, Uhlans, Dragoons, Cuirassiers and Hussars, so I've bought enough for a regiment of each of those. They are going to be releasing the plastic infantry for the Prussians and the French in July, I think, and I'm sure they'll be following on very quickly. We've already seen pictures of French artillery on their Facebook page. One other thing I will just show you as well, as an absolute shame and travesty, I have lots others who need to be based. I recently moved house, and this will be the first time I've opened a box. Do not judge me. They need some love. They need some love. These were mostly planned for the French expedition to Mexico, or Maximilian Adventure as it's sometimes known, and that's why there are some guys down here which are actually Imperial Mexican troops with epaulets like scratch built, and then here on the top are all my Mexicans. So yeah, it's going to take me a bit of time now. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, guys. Take care.